The Burden We Carry, Chapter 1. The stone hit the grain with a dull, uneven sound. Akich pushed the small stone against the large one, her shoulders aching with a deep, familiar pain. The millet needed grinding, and her children needed feeding. The work would not do itself. 13. The number filled her thoughts as she watched the new wife. Her name was Mitch, a young girl with wide, nervous eyes, hanging her faded brown dress on the line. She was quick on her feet, this one, eager to please. She was the 13th wife. They always came the same way, with a shy smile and one small bag. They shared their husband a box bed for a few weeks or months, and then they left. Their place was soon taken by another new face. Akich was the only one who stayed. She was the first wife, the foundation of this household. It was her duty to welcome each new wife, and she did. Her children had long given up learning their names. Instead, they described them by what they remembered. Mama Yvonne with the fat baby, or Nyakakia who gave us the spoiled sweet potatoes. Thinking of her own arrival now felt like remembering another life. She had once been like Mitch, full of hope. Now she was the mother of 6 children. Their laughter was the only real sound in the quiet compound. Suddenly, Baba Amez's shadow fell across the doorway. Both women froze. He didn't speak, just looked around his home before turning to leave. His dirty gumboots kicked up little clouds of dust as he walked away. He provided the house and the land. Everything else, the food, the peace, even the children's health, was a woman's responsibility. Akich's youngest child, Kemi, stumbled over and wrapped her arms around her mother's leg, crying. Akich stopped her work and rested a dusty hand on the child's head. This was her life, endless work, children who needed her, and a constant stream of new wives to welcome. She turned back to the grinding stone. Thump, thump, thump. Chapter 2. Akich had a dry, scratchy cough that felt like something was stuck in her throat. It was the dry season, and dust clung to everything like a second skin. At first, Akich told herself it was just the dust causing the cough. But the cough didn't go away. It wasn't the kind of cough that brings up mucus when you have a cold. This was different, a dry, hacking cough that would suddenly take over. It would happen while she was cooking beans, while washing clothes at the river, or in the middle of the night. It felt like her chest was being rubbed raw. Then the fevers started. They didn't come on slowly. Instead, she would suddenly get violent chills while lying beside her children on the mat, the bed her husband now shared with his new wife. One minute she would be shivering with cold, her toes like ice. The next, she would be burning up, her skin soaked with sweat and her head throbbing. She'd push the blanket off, only to start shivering again moments later, her teeth chattering as she curled into a ball. The tiredness was the worst. This wasn't the normal tired feeling after a hard day's work. This was much worse, a deep heaviness in her bones that even sleep couldn't fix. It felt like her blood had turned thick and heavy, making every movement difficult. She stood at the grinding stone, the pestle feeling as heavy as iron in her hand. The regular pounding sound that used to comfort her now seemed to mock her weakness. The morning sun, usually welcoming, now felt harsh and overwhelming. Akich closed her eyes for a moment, swaying on her feet. The world seemed to move, and the compound blurred before her eyes. She could hear her children playing, their laughter sounding far away, but she didn't have the energy to check on the youngest or make sure they were safe. This wasn't the strong body that had carried 6 children and worked in the fields from morning until night. She tried to hide her sickness. As the first wife, she couldn't show weakness. Weakness might mean her husband would replace her. She forced herself to sweep the compound even when dizzy. She fought down nausea to cook her husband's meals. She put on a smile for her children, making her voice sound cheerful when her daughter Kemi asked, "Mama, why are you so quiet?" But her husband Abak had started to notice. Last week, he asked why she had come back early from the farm and shook his head with disappointment when she said she would return later. One day, while cleaning stones out of the rice, a dizzy spell made everything spin. The rice grains seemed to swim before her eyes. She grabbed the mud wall of the kitchen to steady herself, breathing heavily. The newest co-wife, Mitch, was watching her with something close to pity in her young eyes. "Mama Rame," Mitch said quietly, "you are sick." Akich stiffened, straightening her back forcefully. She wiped the sweat from her upper lip with her hand. "It's nothing," Akich said, her voice rougher than she meant it to be. "It's just the dust. This always happens this time of year." She turned back to the rice, her heart pounding not from work, but from the cold fear growing inside her. The tiredness, the fevers, the sweats, and the cough that wouldn't stop made it clear this was more than dust. This was sickness, and it was getting worse every day. Chapter 3. The clinic was a low, sprawling building, its former white paint chipped under the brutal sun. Within, the acrid smell of antiseptic and quiet despair clung to the atmosphere. Akich sat on a wooden bench, her tightly clasped hands wrapped around each other in her lap, amidst the other women with vacant eyes. She had told Baba Ahmed that she was visiting her sister. He had grunted, uninterested. A counselor with a soft, tired face called her by name. In a small, windowless room, the woman spoke quietly, her sentences slow and rehearsed. Nothing could make the words kinder, however. "The test is positive, Akich, for HIV. The virus has been in your body for a long time. It has now progressed to AIDS." The world didn't break into tiny pieces. It just shrunk. The room closed in so she only knew the feel of the wooden desk and the slow beat of her heart. The counselor's voice faded off into the distance, talking about CD4 counts, viral loads, antiretroviral medication to suppress the disease. The counselor's questions made the truth impossible to ignore. "Has your husband been tested? Does he have other partners?" Akich shook her head, unable to speak. The counselor, a kind woman named Grace, tried to give her advice. "You will need to take medicine every day for the rest of your life," Grace explained. "It will help you stay strong. You must also try to eat good food and get plenty of rest." The instructions felt impossible to Akich. How could she afford good food? How could she rest with so many children to care for? Then Grace said something else. "This sickness is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. It is a disease, not a punishment. Remember that." It is not your fault. Those simple words changed everything. Suddenly, Akich understood. She thought about her husband's many other wives. She remembered the times he had been sick with a strange, lingering fever and then suddenly got better. Most of all, she remembered how he always criticized her, calling her weak whenever she felt tired. Now she saw the truth. He must have known he was sick. He must have known he had passed it to her. He called her weak, knowing she was getting sick from the disease he had given her. He had known all along, and he had said nothing. The anger she felt was colder and harder than any fear. Chapter 4. Akich knew she had to escape. She had to protect her children. She quickly packed one bag, gathered her 6 children, and left for her mother's house in the next village. This had happened before. 4 years ago, after the birth of her 4th child, Akich had left her husband. Baba Ahmed had started bringing more wives home. He was spending all his money on them and coming home drunk. He would shout at her and the children. There was never enough food. One day, Akich had enough. She packed a small bag, took her 4 children, and went back to her mother's village. She told her mother everything. "I cannot live like this anymore," she said. "I am afraid. My children are hungry." Her mother did not hug her. Instead, she looked angry. "Go back to your husband, Akich," her mother said firmly. "What will people in the village say? They will say I raised a foolish daughter who abandons her marriage. You will shame this family. God hates divorce. You must be patient." Akich felt her hope disappear. She had thought her family would protect her. Instead, they were sending her back to the unhappiness she had just escaped. The next day, feeling completely alone, Akich picked up her bag. She gathered her 4 children and started the long walk back to Baba Ahmed's compound. She was going back because she had no other place to go. Presently, sitting on the worn-out floor of her old home, she cried and told her mother everything. She explained her sickness, what the doctor said, and that her husband must have given it to her. Her mother listened, looking shocked. But when Akich finished, her mother did not comfort her. "Oh, Akich," her mother cried out, sounding upset. "What will the neighbors say? They will say my daughter left her husband, that she has the shameful sickness. You will disgrace our whole family." Her older sister, Maria, agreed strongly. "Mother is right," Maria said. "The devil is testing your family. You must fight for your marriage, not run away. You should pray and fast." Their words did not help her. Instead, they felt like heavy chains, pulling her back into danger. This second betrayal hurt most because it came from her own family. They were forcing her to return to a terrible situation and calling it faith. Feeling completely defeated and broken, Akish went back to her husband's house the next day. He saw her bag and her swollen eyes and smiled unkindly. "So the runaway has returned," he said. "I hope you now know your place." Chapter 5. Akish returned to her husband's house, which now felt like a prison. Her health continued to get worse. The clinic gave her special medicine called ARVs drugs to take every month. But instead of helping, the medicine created new problems. The pills were free, but they were very strong. Since there was rarely enough food in the house, Akish often had to take them on an empty stomach. This made her feel terribly sick. She would vomit, bringing up both the bitter pills and the small amount of porridge she had managed to eat. The clinic counselor had told her the medicine works best when the body is strong, but the sickness and hunger were making her weaker every day. She became so thin that her clothes were loose and hung off her body. Seeing Akish grow so thin, her husband's aunt took her aside. "This is not a normal sickness," the old woman whispered. "A jealous woman has used witchcraft against you. You are cursed." Losing hope and desperate for a cure, Akish used the little money she had saved to visit a traditional healer. The healer gave her bad-smelling herbs to boil and drink. He also told her to bury an egg at a crossroads at midnight. She was to also dig to the left of the fence near the cow shed, where she was to find chicken entrails hidden. She was to take them out and burn them. Akish did everything he said, but it was a waste of time and money. These rituals only kept her from getting the real medical treatment she needed. When the traditional medicine didn't work, Akish turned to her church. The pastor, a man who wore expensive shoes, placed his hands on her head and prayed loudly. "You are healed," he shouted, and the church members shouted Amen in agreement. He told her, "Stop taking the white man's poison. Have faith in God, the ultimate doctor." He said she should stop her medication to prove her faith. Wanting so badly to believe in a miracle, Akish listened to him instead of the doctors. She stopped taking her ARVs. Staring at her own thin, sickly reflection in the mirror, she whispered, "If God is real, he will cure me. He knows I didn't do anything to deserve this disease." Chapter 6. After Akish stopped taking her medicine, she became very sick very quickly. Without the drugs to fight it, the virus spread through her body without anything to stop it. She had a fever all the time, and her body was either too hot or shaking with chills. Her cough got much worse. It was no longer dry, but deep and wet, and she would cough up a thick substance that was a scary, rusty red color. Painful sores appeared inside her mouth and on her lips, making it too painful to eat even soft foods. Then, strange patches began to spread across her skin. She was so weak that she moved through her home like a shadow. She didn't really live there anymore. She just drifted slowly from one room to another. The compound, which used to be noisy with activities and laughter from the children, was now quiet and filled with the feeling of sickness. Her older children had to take care of her. Her 14-year-old daughter, Emma, was now the one acting like the mother. She tried to cook the little food they had. She would bring a wet cloth and gently wipe her mother's face and hands. The faces of her children were no longer carefree. They were filled with a deep worry that made them look much older than they were. Her husband, Baba Emma, wanted nothing to do with her. He gathered his belongings and moved into another hut, far from hers. He told people that the smell of her sickness made him feel ill. It was later that Akish found out he had already brought a new 14th wife to live with him in that hut. Chapter 7. Akish lay on a thin mat on the floor. She was too weak to climb onto her bed. She dragged herself slowly to the basin swarming with flies to relieve herself. The room looked blurry, and she couldn't see clearly. Her breathing was fast and shallow, and her chest felt like it was filled with broken glass. In her confused, painful state, she didn't see her life flash before her eyes. Instead, she thought clearly of the unfortunate route her life had taken. Akich saw with terrible clarity how her life had been stolen from her. It began with her husband, the man who had vowed to protect her but instead used her body for his pleasure and gave her a death sentence. When the sickness came and she sought safety, her own family had turned her away, worrying more about village gossip than her survival, telling her to return to the very man who had poisoned her. Even the things that should have saved her became enemies. The medicine that made her vomit because she had no food, the traditional healer who took her last coins with false promises, the pastor who told her to abandon treatment and wait for a miracle. As she struggled to breathe, Akich understood the truth. She wasn't simply dying of a disease, but had been failed at every turn, betrayed by everyone and everything that should have protected her. She had not had time to study the new wife, but she hoped she was kind and would properly look after her children if not. She hoped she had equipped them with enough resilience to withstand whatever came next. A small cry broke through her thoughts. It was Kemi, her 3-year-old. The child curled up next to her on the mat, looking for warmth. Akich could feel that Kemi was burning with fever. Her own body was always hot, but Kemi's heat was different. It was the sharp heat of a new, serious sickness. With all the strength she had left, Akich lifted a shaking hand and felt Kemi's forehead. It was terribly hot. Suddenly, she remembered the counselor's words. A mother can pass the virus to her child during birth or through breastfeeding. She had breastfed Kemi for 2 years, and she had stopped taking her medicine. A low, painful groan came from Akich's mouth. It wasn't a cough. It was a sound of complete and total hopelessness. It was the sound of someone realizing that her own death sentence had now been given to her baby. She pulled Kemi's small, hot body close to her. Tears she didn't think she had left began to flow, wetting her child's hair. The third and final betrayal was now complete. The disease hadn't just taken her life. It had also stolen her child's future. In the quiet, heavy air of the hut, the only sound was the struggling, ragged breaths of a mother and her child, both now living on borrowed time.